Well, welcome everyone. As you can see, we're taking care of a little bit of housekeeping, a little bit of a technology there. While you're logging in, thank you for joining us. Please go to the right-hand column, the sidebar there, and if you could just enter your name and your organization into the chat, that would be fantastic. I see we've got a lot of people already, so thanks for doing that. And Lorén, I'm going to kick it right over to you.
Asui Kwasan, Natasawis Makasini Pashao at Nahai Gansek, Natasawis Lorén Spears at English at Ni Nahai Gansek Nahantek, Namanatuman, Napioman, Indian Kisakwat, Nashbi, Nachikwanahi, Tahanoanash, Katabatamish, Katantua, Uchi Wami, Nawamani Tonk Natonksoag. So hello everyone, welcome to the homelands of the Narragansett people where I reside, and in the chat you can put where you reside. We put in native-land.ca URL, which is an app that will help you find the homelands you're on if you do not know. And I just blessed our session and this conference and said thank you for the beauty of this day and all the beauty that surrounds us in this lovely autumn time in New England. So Katabatash, and welcome to our session. Let's take it outside.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lorén. Welcome, everyone. I'm Brindha Muniappan from the Discovery Museum in Acton, Massachusetts. Welcome to Let's Take This Outside. In our session today, you'll hear 4 short presentations about ways that 4 distinct museums approach engaging our visitors in and with nature. After each of these short presentations, we'll have a Q&A. So please add your questions and comments to the Whova chat. I'll begin with a description of some of the outdoor experiences at the Discovery Museum. And then Leslie Jones from the Preservation Society of Newport County will talk about their Edible Schoolyards program. Kate Leavitt will then describe ocean stewardship and conservation experiences at the Seacoast Science Center. And Lorén Spears, who you just heard from, will share details of the Indigenous cultural programs offered at the Tomaquag Museum. So the Discovery Museum is a children's museum in Acton, Massachusetts, a suburb of, we have a focus on science and nature and have 4.5 acres, which abuts about 200 acres of conservation land in Acton. We recognize that the entire region are the traditional homelands of the Nipmuc Indigenous peoples. So at the Discovery Museum, we believe that, if we can introduce children and adults to nature in a playful way, we'll be providing them easy entry to spending time outdoors. And if we can do this, introducing people to fun and playful ways of being outdoors, they'll want to spend more time outdoors, they'll explore, they'll want to be learning a bit more about their environment. And this could provide the basis for lifelong learning and care for nature. So we have multiple outdoor spaces that we've created for people to enjoy. In this slide, you can see a picture of our giant treehouse, which is part of Discovery Woods, which is a built environment, nature environment. It has, Discovery Woods has Adventure Hill, which has a large slide and giant boulders for people to climb up and down. It has a sensory garden. It has 2 human-made beaver lodges. It has Woodland Nook with, large logs and stumps and boulders. We also have Ferryborough, which is a less built environment, far less built, where visitors can enjoy being in amongst the birch trees, and pine trees. They will, it's pretty wonderful. They'll hunt for fairies and leave little tokens for them and create little teepees and make music in various ways, spontaneous ways. And as I mentioned before, we abut conservation land and have direct access into the woods from the museum. And there are a number of paths for people to explore as they'd like. So Discovery Woods was intentionally built, again, to try to provide easy access to folks and with accessibility and inclusion in mind. So Discovery Woods, the treehouse, the boardwalks, they're all wheelchair accessible with many of the elements like the cargo net you see in this picture and a giant basket swing, for example, being fully accessible to people with physical disabilities. Discovery Woods was created with our standing accessibility advisory committee and with the input of many user experts. We also recognize that many of our visitors are not very familiar or comfortable being in nature, maybe not having very much access to green space. And so we've tried to provide a number of low-key entry points to spending time in nature. Sort of at our rain garden, we created a tiny trail into the conservation land so people can take just a little jaunt if they'd like to, staying within eyesight of the museum, but spending a little bit of time in nature as they're comfortable with, and then coming back out if they'd like. And then of course, we have been offering facilitated programs to provide, sort of the personal connection and co-exploration of the outdoors and the environment. So those facilitated programs definitely happened before the pandemic. We're only slowly now restarting programs, but in the before times, we had weekly walks into the forest. We would do rock flipping and cloud gazing. We'd create pop-up adventure playgrounds to encourage a little more risky or risk-taking. Would plant, harvest in the garden, and you might be familiar with an annual program, a week-long mud lovers site called Dirtopia, which is primarily based around delivery of a dump truck load of dirt mixed with a little bit of water, and basically that equals fun for all. So we aren't doing as many facilitated programs these days, although we are open and did reopen in August at 20% capacity. Most of our offer is still available, but recognizing that we could provide more for folks to do outdoors, we created an obstacle course, a trike track, have put out large lawn games like Giant Connect 4, added chalk to the patio, and created a new welcome kiosk for folks who want to venture into the woods, conservation land on their own. And we've added 3 large-scale Leonardo da Vinci themed exhibits, which we were fortunate enough to have begun pre-pandemic, and then this summer we're able to install. So you can see those elements here. There's a life-size Vitruvian Man sculpture, which certainly makes for many fun photo ops. We have a large lever, which it turns out is actually pretty great for 2 households to collaborate and play together while being physically distanced. And then we also added a model of one of Da Vinci's self-supporting bridge designs. So we thought that most people would want to spend time outdoors when we reopened, and we've been surprised that actually a number of our visitors are pretty comfortable spending their time inside. I guess I refer to Colleen Dillenschneider in her keynote address on Monday, where she mentioned, perhaps when people are feeling comfortable and sort of safe and secure, they might be willing to spend time indoors. And so, maybe our visitors, a lot of members know us and perhaps trust us, and maybe that's why they're sort of enjoying the indoor spaces. But nevertheless, as we do every year, despite the weather or because of the weather, we encourage people to go outside year round, and we continue to do so. And we will be creating new enticements for people to play outside. So sometime in the future, we can talk about how sock skating and igloo building and sledding went. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks, Brenda. I'm going to take a look at our Q&A to see if anybody has any questions currently. Nothing quite yet, but one question I have for you, Brenda, is what did you find most difficult from a staff perspective in achieving all of this, considering COVID?
I think what we needed to come to terms with was letting go of, our ethos of free choice and free play, and having to, create these capacity restrictions at the various experiences that we had, and sort of, encouraging people to stay physically distanced and just to, sort of initially anyway, kind of follow a certain path if they were going to venture into Discovery Woods, as opposed to, just having free choice. As we've been going through, what being open during a pandemic is like, we've been able to, relax in some ways, like not necessarily needing to require like a one directional flow, but also gaining more confidence and, insisting that folks, even outdoors, need to wear masks, but they can have fun, in any of the experiences as long as they're staying with their household. So I think, having those restrictions sort of required our entire team to kind of rethink a bit how we offer the experiences to everyone.
Right. We have a question here from Alyssa Nelson. What percentage of your museum was inside as opposed to outside pre-COVID?
That's a really good question. What percentage? So the majority of our experiences are inside, but despite that, I would say probably 70 to 75% are indoors and 25 to 30% are outside.
Great. All right, well, just as a reminder, everyone can ask questions for individual sessions at the end or during, and we'll feed those in. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end of this, end of our presentation. So I'm gonna go ahead and screen share my presentation now. Okay, so my name is Leslie Jones. I'm the Director of Museum Affairs and Chief Curator at the Preservation Society of Newport County. I'm going to be speaking today about edible schoolyards at Green Animals, which was until spring 2020 a program hosted by the Preservation Society at Green Animals Topiary Garden, which is located in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Green Animals is one of the Preservation Society's 11 historic sites, all of which have horticultural displays and plantings, but we focus solely on the outdoors at this particular site. Green Animals is located on a property formerly owned by the Brayton family, who employed highly skilled gardeners who were recent immigrants to the US from the Azores. From 1905 to 1945, Joseph Carrerio designed the gardens that you see currently with the various green animal characters, and his son-in-law, George Mendoza, continued the tradition in the Azorean style until 1985. So currently we do have a full-time horticulturist who still manages and continues the site's traditions. And there are over 80 topiaries throughout the property, and it's the oldest and most northern topiary garden in the US. But in addition to the Green Animals, we have various vegetable and herb gardens, an orchard, and ornamental planting beds, which is what really led us to utilize those spaces to develop the Edible Schoolyard program, which was based on Alice Waters' program of the same name. Like the Waters Project, our Edible Schoolyard is an innovation hub for edible education, curriculum, and pedagogy. As an institution, we're charged with caring and preserving historic sites and narratives. So we put our own little spin on the educational resources that we provide. We link healthy food choices with school curriculum and cultural heritage. So for example, when classes come to Green Animals, they not only learn about gardening and classroom skills, but they also learn about how certain crops and plants are part of history. And what we grow, eat, and clothe ourselves in are connected to our collective heritage. So it's our goal to use sustainability as the key to opening up these kinds of classroom discussions. The overall mission of Edible Schoolyard is to provide the community with intersection between healthy eating and sustainable education that surrounds nutrition and agriculture. And this is achieved through a social sciences curriculum that we developed with local teachers and horticulturalists. Of important note, Green Animals, the Edible Schoolyard project was only able to take off with generous funding from the Rhode Island Council for Humanities. So I want to make sure they get credit for that. And to make it clear, what I'm about to describe is not what's currently taking place because of COVID-19. We've had to suspend the program's in-person opportunity just because of the inability to host field trips, because this is mostly school-based, the children we're bringing in for these programs. I just want to make sure, am I getting cut off at all? It looks like I'm pausing. Okay, great, good. So previously, our curriculum was designed for both in-classroom and on-site experiences and divided into 3 educational levels, K through 5, 6th grade through 8th grade, and then 9th grade through 12th grade. And through lesson plans, teachers prepare their students for what they're going to experience on site prior to visiting. Once they arrive, they're welcomed and tour the grounds with our education manager and chief horticulturalist. And then we take them into either an indoor classroom, weather dependent, or an outdoor classroom at the edible schoolyard garden that we have on site. I'm just going to go through a couple examples of the different curriculum that we have. All this is available on our website, and it is in the resources page that was put together for this. So K through 5, we look at local produce, Where Are You From?, which investigates human migration and foodways, the world of trees at Green Animals, and Follow the Drinking Gourd. I'm going to elaborate on Follow the Drinking Gourd because that is one of the lesson plans that we use for every single age group that comes to Green Animals. And it uses imagery and stories. Students discuss the Underground Railroad and slavery through the traditional story of the drinking gourd, with the objective of allowing students to openly communicate about difficult histories and understand how someone's surroundings can inform their view of nature. This program does require teachers to prepare their students in advance with information about the history of slavery, the Civil War, and the Underground Railroad. Our staff members then bring the class students and teachers to the Gourd Arbor, which is, there's a picture of that in the lower left-hand corner of this slide. And we read Jeanette Winter's Follow the Drinking Gourd, and then follow with an open discussion about student experiences with the story and song. And when they return to their classroom, they write a reflection on their understanding of that experience. So for grades 6 through 8, other lesson plans includes Gift of the Nile, which touches on irrigation and waterways and agriculture, the world of trees, colonial kitchens, and again, following the drinking gourd. We also touch upon westward expansion. Grades 9 through 12, we look at food traditions, the world of trees at Green Animals, colonial kitchen gardens, victory gardens, and again, follow the drinking gourd. In addition to the curriculum, the vegetables and fruits that are yielded from these gardens, we donate frequently throughout the year to the Martin Luther King Jr. Center in Newport, which is about 1,300 pounds per year. And since I didn't mention it before, all of the produce and gardening practices at Green Animals are organic and free of harmful chemicals. In the winter, so this program usually takes place either in the fall or the spring. In the winter, we end up closing Green Animals annually just because not that many people want to walk around outside when it's so cold out. We rarely get the snow that makes it so beautiful here, but just as in case there's a question on that coming up. And so what's happening now? Well, because of COVID, we're obviously not bringing people on site, and we also had to dramatically reduce our staff. So we don't have the people resources to allow for, I'm so sorry, of course, my grass cutters just showed up now. We don't have the staff resources to alter the curriculum in the way that we'd like, but our hope is over the next few months that we'll be able to focus on this for the spring and be able to have the curriculum work for not only distance learning that educators can provide as trained teachers, but also that parents can use for their kids in their own backyards. Just quickly, this is a graph that shows the severe difference in attendance as well that we've seen at our sites 2019 through 2020, which of course also impacts our ability to do things in terms of revenue coming in. So our program development and adaptability is all dependent upon, of course, the financial side of things. But, again, we hope to relaunch this when we can and as soon as possible. I just want to make sure I give the photography credits, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Leslie. That was really great. I'm just taking a peek. Looks like we don't have any questions. If anyone does have a question, you can pop it into the Q&A or the chat. As I was watching, I was just curious, you were talking about your social sciences curriculum, and I don't know if you mentioned, I may have missed it, what the longevity of your program is, and if you've ever worked with social scientists or research scientists to, you know, evaluate any specific outcomes of this really cool project?
We haven't done that yet, and that's a really good question and something that I think we should be doing. We do get evaluations from students themselves and from the teachers, so that's helpful, but you know, as it's been locally based thus far, you know, it would be a good idea to have a social scientist take a look at what we're providing.
Great. Well, thank you. And I encourage everyone to pop any questions they might have right into the chat or the Q&A, and we'll keep an eye on both of those. Thanks, Leslie. I am going to share the screen here and illuminate you all on the Seacoast Science Center. All right. Is that coming through okay? Any thumbs up from my crew there? Yep, okay. My name is Kate Leavitt. I'm Director of Mission at the Seacoast Science Center in Ryan, New Hampshire. And to explain the ways that we help facilitate personal connections to nature, I thought it would be helpful to give you some sense of context, you know, show you who we are, where we are, and what we're all about. Whoops, I'm hyper-clicking here, as I want to do. So the Seacoast Science Center is a marine science and nature center that's located directly on the coast inside Odium Point State Park. Our mission is to spark curiosity, enhance understanding, and inspire conservation of our blue planet. And in addition to our marine conservation and our science programming, we practice a very specific kind of outdoor education, and it's one that involves nature-based learning and hands-on exploration of these coastal habitats you see here. We use inquiry-based teaching approaches and lots of fun. Our mission is to inspire conservation, but really the mechanism by which we inspire is to facilitate exploration and inquiry. So we make it fun, we pique curiosity, hopefully sparking, you know, investigation and observation. Sometimes it's just simple outdoor play and recreation. We know that we protect what we love, and like I said, our ultimate mission is to inspire conservation. So although there are learning and skills acquisition goals embedded in what we do, many of our programs and activities are largely exploratory and inquiry focused because we really want to create comfort and joy and stoke a learner's intrinsic desire to be outdoors, really. So in addition to those content goals, there are affect goals. And, you know, a lot of that is building comfort and being outdoors and confidence in the learner's belief in themselves as naturalists and scientists. Traditionally, our nature-based learning engagement has really been reliant on person-to-person connection. We do that via visitor programs and school programs, day camps, community events, and we use that location that you're seeing here to take visitors on hikes, tide pooling and salt marsh expeditions, species scavenger hunts, birding, leaf peeping, nature journaling, and we lead play-based adventures for our little ones, our campers, and our families. And what I'm going to talk about a little bit about today is how we shifted gears to accomplish these types of nature exploration goals in a pandemic. So while I'm talking, please share any ways that you or your organization has initiated nature exploration during the pandemic. And you can share this right in the chat. You can share links or just phrases and ideas. That's fine too. When the center shut down in March, I knew we had to really identify our primary goals for this transitionary period and rethink those modes of engagement. So based on what we were hearing from teachers, families, and the community, we decided to focus on 3 things. And that was maintaining a sense of community via regular connection and communication, empowering kids and families and community members to investigate nature, and again, emphasizing that inquiry and exploration and science, And 3, to really ease the burden on some of the stressors of these new, more homebound learning routines. So all of this while still focusing on what I consider to be our core tenets for nature-based learning, notice, think, wonder. So if you take nothing else away from my little talk here, I hope it is this. These are the words that I really brand into our naturalists and educators' brains. We use these repeatedly and liberally, and this is really our lodestar phrase. And a lot of what we do focuses around these 3 words. So I notice these are really your sensory-based observations. You know, I notice there are lots of little holes in these leaves. I notice the edges are smooth. I hear a loud humming sound near the pond. I smell the seaweed on the shore. This feels really slippery and wet. I think this log is falling apart. I think it might be really old. I wonder if there are any bugs underneath. I think you get the idea here. A great naturalist will use this language repeatedly and teach their participants to practice and get comfortable using these words. And the goal here is to hone those observation skills. And what we're trying to do is integrate prior learning and access that prior knowledge and really synthesizing the past and present to create questions and make claims. So these are really important skills we're developing here. It's not focusing so much on naming a species or an organism, but using those observations, your known understanding and your prior knowledge and what you're sensing in the present to ask questions. So it's not what is this animal called, but more, you know, how do these sticky tube feet help it live here in these crashing waves? Or why is there more lichen on this type of a tree than that one? Why are there more snails underneath the seaweed, etc.? Things like that. So what are some specific examples of how we did this or do this? How did we use these principles of inquiry-based learning and exploration and apply them to nature engagement during a pandemic? I'm going to show you really quickly. This is your learning connection. Your learning connection uses fun and place and location. And again, these inquiry-based learning principles that I've mentioned to inspire nature connection and exploration. So each week our naturalists created fun videos and activities, and they were centered around these 4 topic areas: get outside, our ocean, STEM activities, and art and nature. You can see we've got about 15 volumes here, and these links will all be available to you. We started this way back, you know, when we shut down in March. So our first one here is March 23rd. You can see our naturalists, signs of spring, earthworms, go on an owl prowl, all that good stuff there. So those are fun. I've got a couple other resources to share with you, but I'm going to put these into our shared resources document, which you will get the link to here shortly. So you can explore them there. One is a link to these DIY or do-it-yourself outdoor adventures, and these are little adventure guides for use outdoors in different outdoor environments. And they're meant to encourage group and independent exploration. And then the other is, this is an example of a nature-centric community event that we do every year, BioBlitz. And it's one of my favorites. It's a park-wide species scavenger hunt and really a huge celebration of nature and its biodiversity. This year, of course, it was DIY and virtual and lots of videos and links. We've got a crowdsourced ArcGIS map here that you can check out. So what's the answer? How do you meaningfully connect folks to nature during a pandemic? We used elements of fun, place and location, and those inquiry-based learning principles that I mentioned above to inspire that nature connection and exploration. So I encourage you to check out the videos and the accompanying activities, and you can see how we approached it. And I look forward to hearing from you all about the ideas and approaches that, that you took.
Thank you, Kate. So there are a number of ideas that people have put in. Kaylee Redard mentions a garden tour. Will Kernowen mentions a story walk partnership with a local library and 5K runs on trails. Alex Lenning has a walking tour, a virtual scavenger hunt. Alyssa Nelson mentions that in their virtual summer camps, they sent kits in advance for students to work with. In their fishing camp, students were encouraged to find their local fish environments and habitats and go fishing. Christina Walker at the Spencer Museum of Art took advantage of the grove behind the museum and created a student art exhibition called Conference of the Birds.
Oh, so fun. You all are so amazing. That's awesome. Thank you, Brindha. A little bit later in the program, I'm going to share, we tried something different. We used a Padlet to create a resource document. And
I put it in, Kate, because
you did already. Okay.
I did. We can put it in later, but because you mentioned it, I figured I'd give it to everybody.
Perfect. So we didn't want, don't get distracted, but this is meant to be a community resource that we will all crowdsource, and we can share our ideas and links and resources and things. And I know Lorén will also share some information on land acknowledgements and things. So I look forward to learning from you all today and beyond. Thank you.
So hello, everyone. I'm back again. This is Lorén Spears. I'm the Executive Director of Tomaquag Museum. We're a small institution located in Exeter, Rhode Island. We're founded in 1958, so we're 62 years old. And we spend a lot of time outside as a normal. So a lot of the images I'm showing you are pre-COVID, although I will also tell you what we have been doing during COVID-19 that is outside. So we have a wonderful program that we call Children's Hour that is outside, and it's weekly from spring to fall. This year we did it virtually, so you can find some of those episodes on our YouTube page. But one of the ones in particular, I think you might find really fun. It's called Make a Salad. And Silver Moon LaRose led it, and she did it virtually this year with her children to show it. But we had done it the year before outside with the community, and it was going out and foraging to make your own salad from the land around our property, which is in rural Exeter, Rhode Island, and where we have gardens, edible gardens, as well as floral gardens and medicinal gardens. But we're also adjacent to the Arcadia management area. And so we have a lot of fun doing things outside. And in this image is a group of families on this particular day. We have a range of families that come from toddlers all the way up to teens that participate in Children's Hour. We call it Children's Hour, probably should be called Family Hour, but nonetheless, it's different ages at different times and doing different things. So we do a variety of things outside using traditional games. We have school groups that come and we'll do it outside on the lawn. We have, pop-up tents if the weather's too hot or too cool. We also have had opportunity. So like you see the ring and pins we do during our Strawberry Thanksgiving, we actually do a contest where people get to do the ring and pin in layers. And we have hand game, hoop and stick, other kinds of stickball games and things like that we teach people how to play. On the right, that's a winter game. The winter games are tricky, but what we try to do is with group programs or on an event day, have people try these out. So when we've had maple sugar Thanksgiving or something like that, where it's still in the winter months and there's snow on the ground, we might pull this game out and people can play Snow Snake, which is normally people carve their own snow snake, but we have a few here, and then people get to shuttle them down the trough and play with that outside. We also do snowshoes, which was a lot of fun. We've had small school groups that have come from some private schools or charter schools where they can travel in small groups, where half were playing Snow Snake and half were trying out snowshoes outside. And we're planning on this winter having some opportunity to do that, so long as it snows, of course. In the past, we've done a Sequan moon race here at Tomaquag Museum, which is also a lot of fun. Another thing that we do a lot of outside is just storytelling. Oral history on the left, we have a past educator and artist that is showing their traditional art forms and things that are made from natural materials, everything from baskets to traditional clothing to weaving. And on the right, I'm actually with a group doing storytelling at their location. So we do them on our own location as well as visiting other places to do programming outside. We do experience-based opportunities where people can help build a traditional home. So on the right, you see kids in a summer camp that were participating to make a longhouse. They have done making their own snowshoes, doing pottery, both on our own site as well as visiting places. So we were at the National Park Service at Roger Williams National Memorial, teaching them how to make pinch pots, basketry, and other arts that we do outside as part of our learning. We've done a lot of foraging. These are kids that were part of some of our summer camps where we were doing foraging for Jerusalem artichokes and mushrooms and harvesting from our gardens. These are still some of the things that people that have visited the museum were able to go outside and see things that are in our landscape. I literally did a hiking tour this morning with a group from a local high school. They toured inside first and then outside for an hour, where they got to explore the flora in this ecosystem and the uses of it, whether that's tulip poplar or maple or birch, and what the uses are for those things, and explore those resources. And as I mentioned to you at the beginning, there's Children's Hour that has music and dance and storytelling and games and scavenger hunts and art projects that are all outside and intergenerational. So there's so many things that we do. We have events throughout our year that are outside where we're teaching people about our history and culture through music and dance and storytelling and demonstrations, art demonstrations, experiences where people can go up to the table and make, do a make and take of their own resources. And so this is just an image of one of our events where we're teaching everyone else how to dance, and they were able to participate in the welcome dance and learn that particular dance. And so here's some demonstrations on basketry, but we do food demonstrations, we do art demonstrations outside. And of course, if it's a food demonstration, they get to sample the food. We've done times where they're making their own based on the modeling of it. Through COVID-19, we've been doing some art workshops and actually sending them their kit. I did spend some time at the Green School, which is an environmental school that has an outside amphitheater where we do cultural education. So sometimes it's on our own location, and sometimes our educators are at other spaces. This is some images of our Thanksgivings, which are annual events that we have. This year, because of COVID-19, we were not able to have these in person, but we did do virtual Thanksgivings with art contests and storytelling and video clips of dance demonstrations and things of that nature. So we have been doing a lot of those things and posting them on our YouTube page. And we are incorporating as much as we can. We're small and we're rural, so in some ways that can be helpful because we don't have as big of a scape to manage, but we still do. Someone had asked earlier a question on how much you do outside, and I would say that we still, even though we have a lot of programming that's outside and the gardens that's outside and some of the activities that are outside, our museum is still probably leans toward a history museum as a native run institution and talking about our history and culture, but we like to connect it to the outside because as Indigenous people, we are directly connected to this land, and our stories and our history and our life ways are steeped in the land. And so when people are looking at the birch bark canoe in here, and then you can go outside like we did today and actually see a birch tree and talk about how the landscape has changed, and that if we want to actually make a birch bark canoe today, we'd actually have to go into Canada for those resources. So to have those opportunities to make those connections between the flint corn that you see in the exhibit on the mortar and pestle, and then be able to go outside in the garden and see it. And part of our outdoor activities there is kids are actually able to grind corn outside during those children's hours, as well as event days throughout the year. We've been doing guided nature tours here, as well as nature tours off-site. I'm actually going to be doing one in a couple of weeks in the northwestern part of the state. So we're engaging them in the history of Narragansett, Niantic, Nipmuc, and Wampanoag peoples that intersected with Rhode Island, and utilizing this land and this landscape to tell that history. As our elders tell us, the landscape is, our history is literally written in this landscape. And so we really do a lot of things outside, but we do tend to connect it with inside first. And so whether we're playing games outside, doing camp outside, or doing nature tours, as we call them, that is connecting people to traditional ecological knowledge, that's outside. We're also inside and connecting them to the cultural belongings that are in our exhibits that are connected to outside. We have taken kids in our summer camps down to the water, and so that they can make their own nets and catch crabs, and to collect quahog shells, and to explore the salt waters and the estuaries in relationship to our knowledge and our land here in this space. We have partnerships with Kettle Pond Visitor Center, where we helped them, which is the National Park Service, where we helped them create an Indigenous garden. And we were able to create curriculum that goes with that for activities for them to learn and understand the resources in that garden and how it connects to Indigenous people, and also to do programming where people can come up and explore cultural materials, what you might call objects or artifacts, cultural belongings or cultural materials, to decolonize the word, that are in the actual garden, so that they can see, we take them outside and make corn husk dolls and make baskets and weavings and things of that nature. So each of our outside activities are related to the cultural knowledge that we're trying to express in the museum about our history, our culture, our life ways, historically, but through today. As I shared with the group that just left this morning, every exhibit has something historical in it, meaning hundreds to thousands of years old, to something contemporary, and that's done purposeful in our museum. And so it's the same thing when we're outside in nature. We want them to be connected to it in the way that our ancestors were connected to that land, but we also want them to understand that we're connected to that land today, and that we're still foraging for mushrooms, we're still growing crops, we're still building traditional homes. Maybe we don't live in them today, but we're building them for ceremonial and cultural competency purposes. And so we want people to have access and have that exploration in the experience that they're here. It's one thing to see a picture of a longhouse, and there's another thing to sit inside a longhouse and hear storytelling, or to play bowl game or moccasin game or something within that structure. And so each year, those structures are rebuilt. So this year, we did not rebuild our longhouse, but we're hoping to next year, so that people can continue to have that opportunity. COVID-19 definitely changed things for everyone in different kinds of ways, but we are doing small private tours on site, and then the rest is virtual. So those that can come as a small private tour, some of those people choose to do the nature tour and be outside and do those explorations, such as a game or a hike or an art workshop if the weather was nice. Now we're getting into the cooler weather, so that's a little harder. So I think I'll stop there, and if people have questions for any and all of us, they can let us know.
I'm seeing a few in the Q&A, so I'll just go ahead and pick some of these up and we can all chime in, or if there's one particular to you, Lorén, I'll direct it to you. So let's see here. Any specific advice for small shops or starting an outdoor program from scratch? I know starting an outdoor program from scratch is very intimidating. And from our perspective, we have had to create other outdoor experiences at the Preservation Society since COVID has started. And I think considering what everyone's going through, the only advice that I can give is make sure it's relevant to your mission, but then also make sure that's something that your staff can handle with ease. It's better to do something that you can do well than to just add something onto your roster for the sake of doing it. I think everyone's staff are experiencing a bit of burnout, as well as stifling their creativity. But that's from what our perspective is. We've done things that we know we can do well, and that we have the staff resources to do. Does anybody else want to add to that?
I think that's excellent advice. The only thing that I would add in there, and this is in the resources document, there's an organization called Beetles. It's spelled BEETLES. And the link is in that Padlet. They do, as Leslie said, if this, aligns with your mission nicely and the skill set of your staff, there are excellent resources there for how to lead really high quality field experiences and outdoor education there.
I'll add something there. So a couple of summers ago, we did a STEAM camp. And when you hire in the younger staff members that support, there tends to be seasonal when it's a camp, there's some additional seasonal staff. I would say build in a little extra time in the training because we made a couple of assumptions, we meaning the older staff that's always here, that they understood things about, like, for example, gardening that they didn't really know. And so we ended up having to go out when we thought we had trained younger staff, like younger college age students, to kind of be the leads. They didn't necessarily know all the environmental knowledge that we kind of carried around in our heads that they didn't actually know, and then how to connect it, in our case, to culture as well. So I would just say, make sure whatever new program you're doing that you build in a little extra training and some trial and error of practicing it on other people before you practice it on the public.
Great advice. Another question that we have here is, for those of you harvesting either gardened or wild plants for edible activities, how do you ensure that folks don't make mistakes and end up with something toxic or that causes allergic reactions? From our perspective, we do have a release form that schools sign that basically states, we're not foraging as part of these activities. We do have a controlled garden that children are exploring in. And if there are allergies, the teachers are required to let us know that in advance of the students coming on site. But we actually haven't had any issues with that in the few years that we've been doing the program, which we're pretty lucky on that. But it certainly could pose problems, and it is something for everyone to think about when you're looking at potentially plant identification. I know, Lorén, you probably have some really great experience with this.
So we do that, the foraging, with our children's hour or with our event days. And that means the parents are there. And what we usually do is collect all the things. So, like, for example, getting the salad, everything's been given to the educator who knows. And anything that wasn't supposed to be in there is then removed in the washing process. in the preparation for you to try out your salad. So nobody's eating while they're foraging. That's kind of our rule. They kind of eat once we regroup and are back in a more controlled space, like under the arbor or something like that. And we do, you know, we're doing it with parents and families right there. So we don't really do a release at that point in time, because then they kind of have the option, but we've really controlled it as well. We're using our own gardens and, you know, sort of the wild edibles, the raspberries that are in the yard, the blueberries that are in the yard, but are wild, as opposed to something that could be risky and that they wouldn't be able to identify.
Yeah, our sensory garden is very new. This season was this year was the actual first trial of it after a test last fall, and so we don't. So everything that's grown in our garden, we put the seeds in. So it's basil, and you know, we did actually plant and harvest potatoes. So that was the one thing we had to pay attention to, because the fruits of the potato plant, not the potatoes themselves, but the fruits, are poisonous. So we did have to pay attention and go in there and remove them from the plants. But everything else was, you know, was planted to encourage people to, you know, touch and smell. And if they wanted to taste, you know, the basil or the lemon balm, they were welcome to. But there was a very limited amount of the offer this year and in our test way. But I mean, I guess at one point we even put in dandelions to try to, you know, be able to talk about a wild natural growth that, you know, often is seen as a weed. But we bought organic dandelion seeds in order to use them. So they weren't even from nature, or, you know, from our backyard to begin with. So we tried to have a little bit of control there. And just FYI, they didn't grow, but yeah.
I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, but I do have sort of a candid experience with our edible schoolyard program. What I think has been most interesting for us with the children that we've been working with is when discussing and identifying vegetables or herbs, it is quite remarkable as a young generation how the lack of knowledge that a lot of them have, if these programs weren't available otherwise. Discussing various vegetables that are grown both locally that one would see in the supermarket, but also things that are a little bit more widely and commonly used. I think that's what makes what all of us are doing so important, and what you all are doing or hope to do in your institutions so vital, that you know, we're teaching the next generation not only about you know, nature that exists now, but hopefully how to care for it going forward, since we are living in, you know, an environmental crisis with climate change. So I just say kudos to everyone, to my people that are here with us as both attendees, but also to our co-hosts here.
So Leslie, I actually want to follow up on that, and I think, you know, connect it. Something that Lorén said, she was noting that in their programs, some of them, they talk about how the birch trees have been moving north, and, you know, that's a sign of climate change. And and probably that connection is made in your programs, Lorén. I was wondering, you know, whether anyone in this session brings forward climate change to their visitors, you know, whether they're children, like at my museum or in other places. Sometimes it can be challenging to bring up, but if we're talking about, right, encouraging people to spend time outdoors and sort of, you know, getting to be, you know, more comfortable in nature in order to potentially become an advocate. How are people talking about climate change, if you are?
So I'm talking about climate change a little bit more in context of environmental justice. So it tends to be more if someone requested that tour or program rather than pervasively. I do talk about regularly invasives, invasive plants and invasive animals that are affecting the environment that we're walking through or exploring in different kinds of ways, but not specifically climate change as a regular, although we were really affected by the floods of 2010. So that gets brought up sometimes, in a walk, in a talk, in a presentation. But usually if the lens is environmental justice, then climate change gets more readily included.
I'll just jump in really quick. We do address climate change in specific programming that people may sign up for, but we also address it in our visitor programs as well. And we're very clear about it, that we believe that it's happening and that we believe that the cause is, man-made. And so we've actually written up a climate change, an organizational position statement, and we did have an incident recently, I'd say in the last year and a half, where we ended up, that was always part of our training for volunteers, but we've now asked our volunteers to sign that. Obviously, what you believe is what you believe, and that's fine. But when you're acting as an ambassador for us in our programs, that this is our position statement, and we ask that you either don't bring it up or you're in line with our organizational statement. And then similar to what Lorén is saying, we talk a lot about change over time, and we try to keep it very data driven. So the BioBlitz events, we now have an 18-year data set for that, and we can look at change over time, and we can look at invasive species, and we can show the data of how those native species are in decline and certain invasives are increasing. And we just build those very conversationally into our program. So I try to keep it very much conversational. And, again, back to that accessing prior knowledge, we kind of meet people where they are and we take the conversation from there. So we're not really trying to, ram home anything, but
All right, I don't think we have any last questions, so this might be a good point to, with a minute left anyway, to end our session. And again, if I'll put the link to the Padlet that Kate created, which is a shared resource for anyone who'd like to use it. And we hope you'll all add to it. Great. Hopefully that went in there. So thank you all for your time today. Thanks so much, Lorén, Leslie, Kate, and Alex for helping us through the session technically. I hope everyone has a good day. Thanks so much. Bye.